War Machine tier list for Heroes of Might and Magic 3, Horn of the Abyss by Guest273. Hey there, Guest273 here. Today I'm coming at you with a War Machine tier list. To rate all 5 War Machines, I will take into consideration the following things: how accessible each War Machine is, how much gold does each individual War Machine cost, how useful is the certain War Machine plus the secondary skills related to boosting it, how many heroes start with this War Machine in their inventory. However, do keep in mind that this rating is subjective. I will quickly mention that the purchasable War Machines each cost exactly 10 gold per hit point that they provide on the battlefield, except for the cannon, which costs more, which honestly is a criminal offense for breaking consistency. Regarding usefulness, most War Machines follow the same trend. The earlier in the game, the more useful they are in general, as unfortunately for them, they cannot scale past a single entity in your army. None of the War Machines can be dismissed from the army, which can even make them detrimental in certain situations. Let us start with the Ballista. Although this War Machine is notorious for always wanting to shoot at blinded enemies, the Ballista has a lot of good qualities. The Ballista can be purchased at the War Machine factory or alternatively at the castle, dungeon and conflux blacksmiths. It can also be purchased in the Stronghold Ballista yard. The barbarians hold it in such high regard that the Ballista even gets its own special building, which the other War Machines can only dream of. Overall, this makes the Ballista relatively accessible. The Ballista costs 205,000 gold. Both the artillery and archery secondary skills increase the damage that the Ballista outputs. The Ballista can be controlled if the hero carrying it has learned at least a basic artillery skill. It acts at the end of every combat round, followed only by the first aid tent, due to both of them having a movement speed of 0. The Ballista used to have unlimited shots, however it has been changed in the Horn of the Abyss to only have 24 shots, which I know is still plenty. Interestingly, the game considers the Ballista as a tier 5 unit. The Ballista has to compete for its slot with the cannon. This is an interesting trade-off, as the Ballista with expert artillery can shoot twice, while the cannon has the ability to shoot walls. The Ballista hides during town sieges if it finds itself on the defender's side. The Ballista is not blocked from shooting if there's an enemy unit standing on the hex next to it. Compared to the cannon, the Ballista ends up doing more damage in the long run if the ammo cart is not present on the battlefield, and less damage in the short term as the cannon has a higher attack and does more damage. In total, there are 7 heroes that have a Ballista speciality. They are Christian the Knight, Torsor the Alchemist, Pyre the Demoniac, Alrak the Overlord, Gunnarsson the Barbarian, Gervolt the Beastmaster, and Ranlu the Death Knight. The Ballista can provide serious fire support for small and medium fights. It can also disrupt your strategies if it decides to hit blinded enemies instead. It is a useful War Machine, however, you must take the ballistic skill if you want to make the most use out of it. The Ballista can also be used as an early game damage sponge, however, there are other, more universally useful War Machines. This leaves the Ballista somewhere in the middle of the pack, so it lands itself in the B tier. Moving on, next up let us talk about the ammo cart. The ammo cart can be purchased at the War Machine factory or alternatively at the Inferno, Stronghold and Tower blacksmiths. Overall, this also makes the ammo cart relatively accessible. An ammo cart costs 1,000 gold. An ammo cart provides unlimited shots for both creatures and War Machines. With ranged attacks, your unit's available shots start to decrease only after the ammo cart is destroyed. There are no secondary skills related to the ammo cart. Despite the fact that the ammo cart is not seen during a creature bank or shipwreck battle, it still provides unlimited ammo. The game considers the ammo cart as a tier 1 unit. The ammo cart is particularly useful for units with a low amount of ranged shots such as pirates, corsairs and medusas. Some challenge maps heavily depend on the usage of the ammo cart in combination with the force field spell in order to deal with large quantities of 2 hex units. There is only one downside to the ammo cart. It is the favorite target of the creatures with a breath attack, as attacking the poor defenseless ammo cart leads to fire breathing the targets behind it and avoiding their retaliation. There are no heroes that start with the ammo cart in their inventory. All in all, the ammo cart is simple to use, cheap and yet very beneficial. This lands the ammo cart in the A tier. Now let us talk about the last one of the 3 classic War Machines, the First Aid Tent. The First Aid Tent can be purchased at the War Machine factory as well as the Rampart Fortress and Necropolis blacksmiths. As cool as the Necropolis pink blacksmith is, unfortunately I cannot give bonus points to the First Aid Tent because of it. The First Aid Tent is the cheapest purchasable War Machine in the game. With a price of only 750 gold, it never needs to go on a discount. The First Aid Tent on its own heals between 1 and 25 hit points of the top creature in an allied stack. The First Aid secondary skill can be learned to increase the healing output output of the first aid tent. The first aid tent can be controlled by a hero if the hero carrying it has learned at least a basic first aid skill. It is the final thing that acts at the end of every combat round due to having a movement speed of 0. The game considers the first aid tent as a tier 1 unit. Unfortunately, for the first aid tent, the first aid skill is considered to be one of the worst skills in the game by many players. Basic first aid, while giving the hero the ability to control the first aid tent, it only increases the maximum healing range from 1 to 25 points to 1 to 50 points of damage healed. It is 1 to 75 damage healed for heroes with the advanced first aid skill and 1 to 100 damage healed for heroes with the expert first aid skill. Having one of the worst skills in the game associated with the first aid tent certainly does not give a good look to all the other war machines. The first aid tent is only ever useful in the early game if you have a few strong tier 5 to 7 creatures early which can solo a melee fight if healed. In a fight against ranged creatures, they will often choose to shoot the first aid tent instead of your powerful creatures as they see it as an easy target. An interesting thing is that the Necropolis blacksmiths produce first aid tents, yet their heroes cannot learn the first aid skill. There are only 3 heroes that start the game with the first aid tent. They are Ryan the Cleric, Jem the Druid, and Verdish the Witch. And although it is fun seeing your first aid tent get beaten by a bunch of horny goblins, I think it's safe to say that the first aid tent is the worst of all the war machines in the game. Despite its low cost and unique slot, it also suffers from being a favorable target for breath attacks. The AI really likes to bully this war machine whenever possible. With all of this in mind, I am placing the first aid tent at the very bottom in F tier. Next up we have the sneakiest of all the war machines, the Catapult. The Catapult only appears on the battlefield during siege attacks on towns with walls, which requires the towns to have a fort, citadel or castle built. This means that you won't see this particular war machine that often. It basically only ever comes out to play when it's needed. The main use of the Catapult is to attack and destroy walls and the gate in order to allow your melee troops to attack during sieges. The Catapult can also attack and destroy the arrow towers of citadels and castles. The Catapult can also be placed on the battlefield as a unit through some map making shenanigans. A good example of this is the map Diagonaling. This war machine costs nothing, and although the Wikipedia says that it has 24 shots, I don't think that I've ever seen it run out of ammo. The Catapult has 1000 hit points, making it the strongest unit in the game health-wise. Together with the mighty Azure Dragons, the ballistics secondary skill enhances the performance of the Catapult. Basic ballistics gives the player control over the Catapult, making it possible to aim at a particular part of the siege structures. Advanced ballistics allows the Catapult to shoot twice, and expert ballistics basically does nothing, unless you believe that it increases some magical % chance to damage the walls. The game considers the Catapult a tier 1 unit, however, due to its massive hit point pool, we rarely see the AI trying to bully it. The Catapult is the first unit to act during a siege. This means that the hero with ballistics attacking a town with walls also gets to cast his spell first. This sometimes gives a competitive advantage in multiplayer. The Catapult can be both a great helper as well as a great burden. It all depends on whether or not you actually want the castle gates to be blocked or to be open. Having the ballistic skill actually gives you that choice. You also don't have to worry about ever losing the Catapult, as even if it gets destroyed, it magically gets repaired for every next siege battle. Although all heroes start with the Catapult, there are also 4 heroes that start with the ballistic skill, them being Olema the Heretic, Theodorus the Wizard, Ulan the Druid, and Yog the Barbarian. All of this places the Catapult in the C tier at the end. It's useful, however, you can't really make plays with it without the ballistic skill. It's a decent little war machine, but it won't win you a siege alone. We've come to the final war machine, the newly added brother of the Ballista, the Cannon. Let's talk about the Cannon. It has to compete for its war machine slot with the Ballista. The Cannon can only be obtained through the Cove Blacksmith or the Cannon Yard map object, making it quite difficult to acquire relatively to the other war machines. The Cannon costs 4000 gold while only providing 250 hit points to the battlefield, and thus it totally ruins the consistency that the other war machines had. Unlike the Ballista, the Cannon can also shoot fort, citadel, and castle walls and towers, making the Cannon extra useful as the attacker during sieges. Just like the Ballista, the Cannon also hides during town sieges if it finds itself on the defender's side. The Cannon can still fire even if there's an enemy unit standing next to it. The Cannon has only 8 shots, however, you won't feel it that frequently, as this war machine packs a punch in the early game. Compared to the Ballista, the Cannon ends up doing more damage in the short term if the ammo cart is not present. However, during long battles the Cannon is limited by its ammo. The Cannon has a higher attack skill and does more damage per shot. It cannot be put in a backpack. The game considers the Cannon a tier 6 unit. The Cannon can be boosted by the artillery skill. However, there is no information on the Wikipedia regarding the archery skill affecting the Cannon. Basic artillery gives you control of the Cannon. Advanced and expert artillery doubles and triples the damage the Cannon does per shot. There is only a single hero in the game that has a Cannon speciality and thus starts the game with it. He is Jeremy the Captain. This makes Jeremy a worthwhile purchase as the Cannon costs more than Jeremy does. The cannon is a versatile war machine as it can help you in multiple ways during the castle sieges, as well as outputting decent damage in the battlefields. Its 250 health also allows it to take a decent beating before going down. Although the cannon is quite difficult to obtain, it certainly outperforms the Ballista, and it can also do the same job as the Catapult. Thus, I cannot see a world where the cannon doesn't go straight into S tier. And this concludes our war machine tier list. Tell me if you agree, don't tell me if you don't. Anyway, I was Guest 273, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.